So it requires, for example, it requires you to be basically, it requires you to talk much more deeper, like what Ariko Romo is doing. Not just the obvious thing, not just functional, because these are the obvious things. So this kind of intellectuality, of course, encourages negotiation, rather than just having a concrete idea on your conviction, but you need to negotiate, especially with clients. So you decide rational things, and then you expand that rational things. For example, you interpret it again. So create this kind of maximum effect with a minimum cost. This is a house that we did, which we try to create maximum effect from a condition where you can see the surrounding area at a minimal cost. In Malaysia, this is considered as minimal cost. It's about 400,000 ringgit, which is around, I don't know, 400,000. What's that? 1 miliar. 1 miliar. I'm looking for Hafiz. Huh?
1.6.
1.6 million. Yeah, something like that. 1.6 million. In Malaysia, that's quite cheap. Here, perhaps I don't know really the culture of that. There's the house. This is the house taken at night. And that's the surrounding. Oops. Yeah. So in CODA we build small things. Although we do large-scale proposals, for example, that's Singapore over there. This is Johor Bahru, which is Malaysia. So they wanted a sort of Islamic symbol, so we did a croissant. So as you enter Johor, you see a croissant. As you enter Singapore, you see a croissant. Arab embassy. We created like a bulb, so it perhaps represents the 4 wives most of the Arabs have. The Ministry of Defense, and other smaller projects. But we are, of course, we are in Malaysia. People know us by doing small things, houses. So we design and build houses, not just drawings. It's in our Facebook, so you can basically Google it up. It's much more modern, going towards the new phase of rhino, concretes. So when we say we build small things, we say we construct small things. In every single aspect. It's basically a risky business, constructing and doing architecture, because we deal with people and we deal with their money. And it has affected our company. For 2 or 3 years we felt a near bankruptcy, something like that. And there are actually, when you start working, there are a lot of things that you do not know. The things that you know is just this much. This is another house. So we kind of like the working method is like we try to give characteristics of the house, and specificity of design for people to recognize, a kind of brand. But these are all just face value, because we are much more interested in the complexity of things, because the character at the end, it blurs out as we delve into construction, to the clients, into the budget, as well as into basically crafting space. So these are some of the kind of like character that we try to give to a project. For example, play, looks like a play button. Icarus, It's a table that looks like a bird that flies, a keyhole, a door that looks like a keyhole. Epicenter, this is where we usually have, that's check here, right? We usually have our offices is a place where we have function. So we keep things busy, even though if we don't have any money, so we try to create something to make us happy. Again, the polydomes, I mean, if you marry 4-person, it's called polygamy. The oasis, air batu, because this is basically stone and this is the gutter, that's why I call it air batu. Pintu down, the door, archway to heaven. Kid A, this is a kindergarten. So Kid A is actually the name of a album by Radiohead, because we don't want the kids to just get an A, we get A+, so we put it Kid A+. Drop G, that means the drop garden, natural history. These are the characteristics I was talking about. Tanah Airku, because this is the National Defense Ministry, so we put water, that means that it's a Tanah Airku. The Dark Throne, what else? Datum, orange, and so on and so forth. So there are several characteristics of it. So in order, basically, now this is a point where when we start to give this character, we start to lose the idea of that character. Is that it's a way that we do things without knowing the future. To us, this is much more interesting. In order not to know the future, you need to constantly change what you do. What you do now, basically what you do now, and then you start to change things. So I'm referring to the ideas again, the ideas like butterfly. They come, it's ephemeral, it loses. Perhaps this is a kind of antithesis of process, like research, because you enter. But actually, it's not like that. It's like staying out of focus, not to know things. But it keeps one alert, because once you don't know things, for example, and the thieves will keep themselves alert, because they will try to basically figure out how can they every day think that there is no God. For example, they will keep figuring out. For example, the communists, they will always think about something to basically defend the kind of system. If it's wrong or right, it's up to them. If you write a research paper based on sort of out-of-focus thing, you would have the end of the research saying that non-conclusive conclusion. It's like if you do a project, I think it's like having a contract when you have an unlimited percentage of provisional sum. Perhaps the provisional sum is much more than the actual sum of the house. And that would be really interesting. So again, in Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities, the city is not really described by its physical stature, but by the forces that keeps it alive. It is a complex organization in which its environment is under constant flux and its inhabitants persevered through intuitional self-persistency. So if you read Italo Calvino, it's not actually about the building, although they describe the building. It's about people who lives in those kind of conditions. And of course, architecture deals not about physical things. It deals with time and the growth. And this is basically existence in Jakarta. It's this time and growth of things. And what you see is much more bigger than architecture itself. So CODA is basically stands for Collaborative Office for Design and Architecture. It's a kind of collaboration. We are all boss, or we are all leaders of the field. So it's quite hard when you have 10 naholders in the ship. We have 10 leaders in the ship. Where would the ship go? But we are interdependent. We rely upon each other. And like Italo Calvino's book, we rely on the idea of time and growth as the most important factor of architecture. That means as you go along, start losing whatever you see previously. This is a kind of ever-changing factor as well. As you want to have so many leaders in your office, this organization will change along the way. When you have new leaders, it will change. New leaders will change. So in CODA, it's like tackling an issue of architecture. It's basically like tackling the city. It's haphazard. It's going to be worse. It's going to basically be congestion. There will be so many unlimited decisions. This is things that make the office as it is. There is actually no straight answer in this kind of practice, because you don't want to achieve the equilibrium. You know, when you talk about equilibrium, it's not about left or right or up and down. It does not exist. I'm going to give you one. There's a one sort of theory of this. It's called the self-organized criticality. This is a physics theory. The theory states that in a configuration of atoms, there exists a tiny anomaly in which, by quantifying these atoms in quantum mathematics or probably other physics calculation, you cannot find any forms and any standards. You can quantify chaos. You know, chaos can be quantified, but you cannot quantify this sort of self-organized criticality. That means that this is in nature. Even in nature, you can see that there's certain measurement that you cannot quantify, and it keeps changing, it keeps growing. Even you cannot basically describe those changes. It doesn't happen in Fibonacci or any other measurement. So in CODA, we understand that the city itself is an whole entity, and the formation of the city is in classical terms because of the age. And every city in the world perhaps is different, even though it's the same meaning. It's the city, this is the bus stand, it's different. And when architecture begins to intervene as a part of a city, nowadays architecture becomes like a fungus, like a kind of like a fascist implementation of a city that wants to actually says that this is a perfect life, this is how you should live life. But city doesn't work that way. Architecture should not work that way as well. It's basically, when you talk about the city, when people say that there's a traffic jam in the city, you don't like that. But basically, if there's no traffic jam and there's no population in a city, that means that that's not even a city, that's a desa, probably a kampung. You know, so it's a kind of love and hate situation. You don't want to have congestion, then that is not a city. So historians also argue, in Malaysia, historians argue even one single house, an old house, 300 years old, should stay there. But actually, if you just leave that house as it is and don't touch anything, but you'll be losing about 300 other people's, 300 people's houses to be built because of just one house. This is out of control. Imperfection is what makes people come back to the city, or people come back to architecture. This kind of perfection. I think I would just end that thought. The kind of organization that we try to propose here, and kind of like imperfection organization. And thank you very much.